My name is Elizabeth, and if you are new to this channel, I work in mental health, and I've also been diagnosed over the years with prolonged depressive disorder. Used to be way cooler when it was called dysthymia. I call it the Eeyore syndrome because that's how people recognize it. I've also been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. I've also been diagnosed with ADHD. Finally, as an adult, in my 40s, I was diagnosed with ADHD, and that made everything make sense. I'm also a recovering codependent. And I lived for 5 years in a narcissistic abusive relationship. In fact, 1 year ago, exactly 1 year ago today, I was discarded by my narcissist so he could have a better life. I wish him the best. And it's been a year. It's been one of the best years in some ways, but it's been the absolute worst year in a lot of ways. This last year sucked, gonna be honest. And I'm not going to dwell on this longer form video about the terrible things that happened or about the relationship. Not going to do that. What I do want to focus on today, and if you've made it this far, we're 1 minute and 12 in, congratulations. It's more than a short. So thank you for still being here. I want to talk about the things that I did to help save myself and how I kind of learned to live again. Because as a codependent and a people pleaser, I grew up this way. I grew up always wanting to make other people happy, fixing everything, not focusing on what makes me happy. And as an adult, that was very evident in the relationships I allowed myself to get into and the situations that I also allowed myself in. I can tell you right now that after this discard a year ago, I guarantee that he thought I was going to go off the rails. I was going to start doing the things I used to do and that I, have been known to do when I'm going through a tough time. And I was, at first, it was kind of I'm going to prove him wrong. And then it became, no, I'm going to do it for myself. But I was determined to not live that life. I did not go down those same paths again. I worked really hard to do this in a much healthier way. And I wrote down a couple things yesterday because there's some things I don't want to forget to mention today. The things that really helped me save myself were I found a really solid support system. And those people that are a part of it know who they are. Some people really had to see me at my darkest. My therapist, because that's the other thing I did was therapy. My therapist and I've talked a lot about the fact that I definitely hit rock bottom and I sat in it. And she kept telling me, you have to sit in it. You can't just run from it. You can't just pretend it's not happening. You have to sit in the pain. You have to sit in the stuff. And I learned to do that, and that helped. And through work with my therapist, I was also able to learn to communicate better with my support system. And that was a big deal. I didn't want a lot of people to know what was going on because I don't want people thinking I'm making excuses or I'm complaining or I'm not strong enough to handle things. And especially at work, I didn't tell a lot of people because I didn't want them to think I was making excuses for the fact that I was struggling to get the daily work done. When I came back, I work in a school. And when I came back in the fall, a lot of people are like, wait, we didn't know this happened. And I'm like, that was the point. I didn't want everybody to know it happened. I didn't want people to treat me differently. I didn't want people to feel sorry for me. And it was interesting to see the reactions. But I also had to do a lot of apologizing because I know that second semester of last year, February 16th is when everything fell apart. Well, school didn't get out until, end of May, early June. I realized when I went back, I had to make a lot of apologies for things that didn't quite get done right or things that I didn't focus on because I was so focused on survival. I have been in survival mode for a year. And I'm finally starting to come out of it, and it's a very nice feeling. And being able to appreciate the peace that I have without the narcissist in my life, it's been pretty nice. So therapy and my support system were the two biggest. And that was a couple people at work, some close friends, family, but just people that would just be there on the days that I was struggling or that would make me laugh in those moments where I had zero desire to laugh. There was a few other things, too, that happened over this last year that kind of helped me keep it together, that helped me survive in that moment, and that to help me, I hate to use the word thrive, but to kind of start to thrive again and to live again. The biggest one, honestly, professional wrestling. You can turn it off now if you want to judge me. I am a big fan of professional wrestling. I have for many, many years. I know I've mentioned them in a couple of my other videos, but I started driving to Orlando to see NXT on Tuesday nights when I could get in during the summer. I WWE, AEW, Ring of Honor, CMLL, AAA, TNA, NWA. I went to a Atomic Legacy Wrestling show over break, over the holidays. And just watching wrestling, and even if I'm not actually watching it, it's great for the background. And I, being in mental health and former teacher, psychology, sociology, they fascinate me. And so the psychology and sociology of professional wrestling, the interaction with the fans themselves, the wrestlers, I find it super, super interesting. Yes, I'm quite the nerd. I acknowledge it with pride. And I started going to see wrestling. I started watching wrestling. My narcissist, as well as a few other people in my life, have devalued me for liking wrestling. And I decided to take control of that and not let that get to me anymore. And I have re-embraced that love. In June, I went to Orlando 3 times for NXT, and then I've gone a couple times since. Like I said, I went to see ALW. I took my wrestling buddy niece to see AEW at the holidays. Just getting out and going to those things. And going out alone, because for the most part, I went to them by myself. I think for 2 or 3 of them, I had somebody with me, but most of the time, I just went out by myself because I had to force myself out. And that's one of the hardest things after trauma and after, you feel like your whole world is shattered, is getting up. And not just, I wanted to stay curled up in bed when I wasn't at work, or I wanted to not do anything, but forcing myself to get up and go out and really kind of start to make sure that I was still doing these things became very important this past year. Along with wrestling, honestly, a lot of podcasts and radio on the wrestling spectrum. Busted Open Radio became 24/7 after the breakup. And I listened to Busted Open up before that, but now they have their own channel on XM, and I will listen to them. And just it's kind of like, it's a comfort thing. I'm being immersed in my comfort. So wrestling as one of my comfort areas is something I immerse myself in. So Busted Open. Honestly, the podcast Story Wars with Big J. Okerson and Luis J. Gomez. That podcast, I think I had listened to maybe 1 or 2 prior to the breakup. And for the first few months, that's pretty much all I listened to. And it made me laugh, and it took my mind off things, and it helped me find the moments to save myself and help me get out of my head in those moments where I was going down a path that I don't want to go down and possibly heading towards decisions that I don't want to make again. And I mean, Big J. Okerson came to Tampa a few months ago, and I actually, which I try not to talk to, the comedians or anything if I go to shows, but because I do love to go see comedians, but I went up and I thanked him and explained that, I had been through a 5-year narcissistic abusive relationship, just come out of it, within the last, 6-8 months, whatever it was. And just thank you for making me laugh, and thank you for that show, because that got me through a lot of those moments where I get kind of twitchy and, maybe I started to miss the person, or started to second guess things, or just got really, really dark. And listening to that show especially, and trying to compete with the players on it, and, just listening to those comedians took me out of it for a moment. And that definitely helped me survive. And so big thank you to them and to him. And, it's amazing how comedy can really push us through those moments where we're not sure we're going to get through them. Because I couldn't really listen to music. I love music, but for a while I couldn't listen to it. It was too much. It was too personal. Too many songs hit about things that I didn't want to think about. When I did listen to music, Ice Nine Kills, Nothing More, I Prevail. Yes, I'm a big fan of the metalcore genre. But I know Ice Nine Kills is my favorite band, and I listen to a lot of them because that helped take me out of my head. But in those moments where even music wouldn't do it, it was all about the podcasts. And again, Story Wars was the number one. I also listened to podcasts like Ninjas Are Butterflies, like Are You Garbage, Shane Gillis's podcast, and probably 3 or 4 other ones. But just listening to that and having that kind of noise in the background and focusing on that helped me get out of my head, because my head was a real dark place for a while and I didn't want to be there. And I needed time to process, but I wasn't ready. And had I not had those things that allowed me to take that mental break, wasn't so good. So I, needed to not always be in my head thinking about it, trying to fix things, trying to process things, because it gets exhausting. And mental health is exhausting. And if you've dealt with mental health issues, you're tired. But you just got to keep pushing because you deserve to heal and you deserve to be better than that. The other things I did is I started taking trips. I started finally going on the vacations that had always been promised to me that if I didn't pay for, it wouldn't have happened, and didn't happen. So, for example, this summer I had always been told by multiple people, I'll take you to St. Augustine. Never went to St. Augustine. Literally have lived in Florida since 2004. Never been to St. Augustine. And I went this summer. I went to Orlando for the night to see NXT. Drove a little farther north and went to one of the springs in the morning and hung out at the spring for a little bit. And then I went to St. Augustine for a couple days. Stayed out at the beach, spent one night screaming at the ocean, letting out all of the anger and rage and sadness and, fill in the blank of the emotion. And then the next day I went and walked around and hung out in downtown St. Augustine. And that night is when I went on the ghost tour. And I have a video up from, June of me at the top of the lighthouse. And remember, if I can make it to the top of that lighthouse, you can do anything, because that was difficult. And probably a year and a half, 2 years ago, physically, I would not have been able to make it up to the top of that lighthouse. But luckily, as part of this kind of journey of trying to get healthier and to get myself back on track and to figure out who I was and what life was, I started going to the gym again, which didn't get consistent until the school year started. Thanks to a few people, that's when I really started kind of pushing the gym, and I've been doing better with that. But I made it to the top of a lighthouse. If I can go to the top of a lighthouse in the dark with a glow necklace on and make it all the way up those stairs and stand at the top and watch the thunderstorm that was going on and look for ghosts, and it made me realize that I can be happy even for just that moment. Because not everything made me happy when I was doing it. First time I went to see the wrestling in Orlando for NXT in June, got on the bus and I cried because there's a charter bus that takes you back to your cars. I cried because I was miserable. When I went back the next week, didn't cry. Got a little easier every time because I realized that I'm allowed to be okay. I'm allowed to live and I'm allowed to have fun. So into St. Augustine, that one was a big, started talking to some people, and really that was a big turning point for me, was St. Augustine and the support system that was created when I was in St. Augustine. And then luckily I had a friend who, her and her mom and her sister were going on an amazing cruise to Alaska this summer, and I was able to go with them. So I, ironically enough, flew myself out to San Francisco and back. And one of the things that the narcissist had left me for was so he could travel more. And I went out there and went on this amazing journey to Alaska. And on the second day of the cruise, or third day of the cruise, the minute we got to Juneau, I lost my phone. It literally is sitting in Juneau Harbor creating a cold water reef. And they are real, I checked. In an OtterBox, it's going to be there forever. But just going on that trip, and especially losing my phone for 9.5 days, it forced me to process. I sat outside on the balcony a lot and just thought through things. I had bought this in Cassadaga, little spiritual tarot town here in Florida that is very cool. And I started writing poetry again. And I started thinking through things. And, my dad and I had a lot of issues when he was alive. He passed away when I was in high school. And I was able to process through some of that stuff and realize that I let go of my anger that I had towards him. And I'm not mad at him anymore. I love my dad. He is very, very flawed. Very flawed. He was an amazing man. But when it came to family, he was what he was taught. And he did the best that he could. And it wasn't that great. But I'm not mad about it. I can forgive him. Not for him, but for me, I can forgive him because, I've been holding on to this for way too long. But that cruise and being forced to kind of focus on being in the moment really helped me kind of get my head together and help me start to process out even the stuff from the discard and from the previous 5 years of this relationship and the other terrible relationships and so-so relationships that I have allowed myself in the past because of my own self-esteem issues, of my own codependency issues that I now was able to start working through. And it really kind of pushed me to start getting healthier. And I do feel a lot healthier. when faced with my narcissist a few months ago, it was a lot easier just to be like, nope, I'm good. I don't need this in my life. And, there are two very special little people that I will never give up on. And I'm blessed to have them in my life. And so I don't regret the 5 years of that relationship. I got to see what, real love is from a child, and how amazing it is to be a bonus mom to some really very, very special kids that I still try to stay in contact with today because they're my kids. But this last year, I could have really allowed myself to go off the rails. And luckily this summer with, St. Augustine and then the amazing cruise and getting to, see whales and meet somebody from my hometown in the middle of Alaska on a small little whaling boat where we are out, whale watching, and getting to see the mountains like that and to see this place that I never thought I'd get to see helped me realize that I'm not done living yet, and I have to keep going. I booked a cruise coming up with some coworkers. I booked a cruise coming up this next summer with my mom. I have other trips I'm planning. I have other wrestling adventures I'm going to go on. There's a lot of things that I still want to do, and that I'm now living for me. And that's a really weird thing for me to say out loud. Don't mind my murder of crows. I fed them earlier, so they want more birdseed. So they will be yelling while I'm talking. But without all of this happening, I don't know if I ever really would have pushed myself to get healthier, to get to a better place. And I don't know if without wrestling and podcasts and comfort TV like Food Network, Travel Channel, Discovery Channel, all the nerd channels, again, I'm a nerd, getting back to watching some sports again, doing the things that I had let go just for various reasons over the years. It helped me realize that, life's too short. And I'm allowed to live. And no matter what anybody's told me or no matter what I've told myself, no, I'm really allowed to live and to enjoy it. And that's my plan from here on out. And I guess I've just been reflecting because this is the 1 year since the discard, since everything completely imploded in my life. And is it perfect? No. Are there still things I need to fix physically around the house and things that I still need to do that I know that I have to stop with the ADHD paralysis and actually do them? Yeah. This video. I've been thinking about this video for 6 months, but I finally sat down. I'm like, you know what? It's the 1 year kind of anniversary of the end of the relationship and of the start of this new piece of my life. So I'm going to make a longer video. And if you're still here 17 minutes and 58 seconds into it, bless you. Thank you for still watching. But we all have those things that we deserve, and we all have the things that are going to help us stay healthy. Again, wrestling, podcasts, music, the gym, my therapist, my support system. These are things that I didn't even really kind of realize. I knew a lot of it, but I didn't use it properly up until this past year. And this past year pushed me to definitely go out of my comfort zone and really start to focus on me, which was scary. As like I said, as a people pleaser who's always focused on everybody else, to focus on yourself, oh dear God, that's like the scariest thing ever. Like, how do I do that? But I deserve it. When I work with teenagers or, clients, whatever, when it comes to mental health, a lot of times I'll say, well, what would you tell your best friend? And they'll have all these wonderful things they would tell their best friend. And I say, well, why can't you tell yourself that? You should be your own best friend. And they kind of freeze up. And I do the same. I've never really looked at myself as being my own best friend. And that, no matter how terrible things were this year, I got to realize that I can be my own best friend. And this YouTube channel, I totally forgot to mention that. In May 10th, I started this YouTube channel and didn't expect anybody was going to watch anything. Didn't expect to have anybody comment or, thumbs up or anything. I was like, okay, I'm just going to be, yelling to the universe. And the numbers go up and people are watching and they're interacting, and all of you have given me purpose. I was able to realize that no matter what I've gone through, if I can try to help somebody not go through the same thing or give them a sense of being seen, because when it comes to mental health, we often feel so not seen and so alone. mental health likes to do that. Mental health issues love to make us feel super, super alone. And if you see me talking and just yapping, and again, I'm not polished. I'm, been told before I'm rough around the edges, and I'm okay with that now. I've come to grips with that and I accept it. But if you've watched my videos and you've gotten something from them, or you've watched them and you're like, wow, okay, I'm not the only one going through this. That's why I'm here. That gave all the crap that I've been through a reason and gave me a purpose to continue and to get healthier and to want to help others even more, and gave me a reason to be here. And there was moments where I wasn't sure I wanted to be here this past year. And I'm glad I am. I'm very thankful that I am, and I'm very thankful for anybody watching this video. I'm thankful for any of the podcasts and the shows I watched in wrestling. And I mean, in June, I just happened to go to NXT, and first time I got to see Joe Hendry, and now he's, NXT champ and whatever. And like, if anybody ever wants to have a nice deep conversation on wrestling, I got you, because I can talk about it for hours, because that's one of my nerd things. But I know I'm blessed, and I'm very thankful for the life I have. And I know that millions would literally kill for this life, no matter how rough it gets for me. And I'm thankful for it. And I am thankful that I have been able to come as far as I feel that I have in this past year. Because a year ago today, and when you know somebody's being sketchy and you know something's not right, and then the minute you call them out on it right around Valentine's Day, all of a sudden they're gone. And then they're with that new person immediately because they were already emotionally cheating prior to. It destroys you. But the biggest thing is you can't let it continue to destroy you. You can't let that person win. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to be healthy. And when you think about it later, you're probably going to realize, man, I'm much better off now. And my life is much better. And my focus is better. And the fact that I want to love myself and I actually want to be happy for me and not as a F you to anybody else, or you just do it for yourself, it's a really good feeling. So a year ago, the world crumbled. May 10th, I started the channel, really started focusing on myself, and I feel like I'm making a ton of progress, and just wanted to kind of share the update in case anybody's been there, or anybody is trying to get out of a nasty situation, or anybody's trying to figure out what makes them happy. Because we can often figure out the negatives, but we have a really hard time figuring out the positives. So I've focused on that quite a bit this year. So I'm going to end it at, 23 minutes instead of 15 seconds. But thank you for watching if you've made it this far. And, I wish you peace. I wish you happiness, a healthier life. We all deserve it. And I'm going to continue on my journey to a healthier life. And I hope you do the same.